All right, thank you all for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Cate Muller-Terhune. Cate started out, just like all of us, sailing at the local level, fleet level, and she has gone on to sail at the Grand Prix level in the sport. That's the absolute top of the sport, the most competitive part of the whole game. And not only does she sail there, she excels there. Has sailed in multiple nationals, has placed well in multiple nationals, including a second 2 years ago in order to qualify to get a world spot. This last year, fourth place in the nationals, and then took that team and went into the worlds and finished 13th. But that's not the whole story. She was in the top 5 until the very last race, and I have an appreciation for what it's like to be doing well until the last race.
Definitely.
And so what's really interesting is that Cate can tell the story from the perspective of doing, what we would aspire to do, which is rising up and then competing at the top. So thank you, Cate. It's very generous to share your time with us. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
And thank you, Paul. And it's been a really fun journey. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about that before I get into the topic, which is going to regattas and traveling a lot. As Paul mentioned, qualified for the Worlds in St. Pete back in the fall of 2022, which feels so long ago now that it's 2024. And we got second at the North Americans. It was my first time really traveling the J70 outside of the typical going to Florida routine that a lot of people have gotten into over the past, 8-10 years. And also my first time actually sailing with, for the lack of a better term, a completely professional team. It was a team that we sailed one regatta prior to the North Americans. We had sailed an event in Chicago, which is where I'm from, so local and not too stressful for me, but still, anyone who's gone to Chicago and sailed there, it is logistically stressful and kind of a pain in the butt. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how to take the stress off of going to regattas, but then also how to really make every time you go out on the water a routine and repeatable, and also something that you're always learning something and taking something away. The more I sailed with my squad over last year, and the more I wrote checks, the more you really start to realize I have to make every moment count, which can become, in the long run, as you're building up to an event like a world championship or North Americans or whatever your goal is, that can in and of itself become mentally taxing. So you're taking time off of work, you're spending money, you're not at home with your family, or your dog. I'm lucky enough to, half the time my husband's traveling to the same events, but last year that was not the case. He was down in Chile sailing Pan Ams when I was sailing Worlds. So, managing all of your time on the water so that you're getting the most out of it, so that you're easing your own mental stress. Because at the end of the day, we all go sailing because it's fun. And I think that it's really easy to lose sight of that as we start to climb up the ladder of success and take the game more seriously. And the thing I came away with after all of last year and having a bummer last race in the Worlds, which was heartbreaking, honestly, is we still had a really fun time, and we still love sailing together. And I bring beers every day when we go racing. I know that that's not common at the level we're performing at, but it's what makes me happy. And no matter how our day went, no matter how our last race was, if it was good, bad, indifferent, it's all right, let's have a beer, let's sail in, let's talk about the day, and let's chill out. So anyway, that kind of gives you a little bit of background of how my year was, and I'm happy to talk about anything throughout this, and I definitely will not fill up the 3 hours. And I also would love questions and interaction because surprisingly, even I get tired of hearing myself. So,
Kate, I love this picture as
yes.
your first picture, and also I realize now looking at this picture, this is the last race of North Americans, and we are over early.
Oh no, Paul, I didn't know that. Where are you?
Yeah, no, it looks really good.
Which bow are you?
1521, that's us, and that has got to be the last race of the event, because that is a killer start. Yeah.
Was 13 also over?
They only called us on that one, so.
I don't even know where I am in this photo, but I just really liked the photo, and I liked having Chicago in the backdrop, you know. So, funny enough, I was talking about this presentation last night at the bar at AYC when I was, you know, thinking about it and slightly stressed. And any of you that know Jake Doyle, he was like, well, you have to start out with, like, what's the goal for the event? And, like, hopefully that's not the goal. I don't think that this is anyone in the room. This was at Davis Island, shockingly.
Yeah, really.
Shocking, I know. This was our 1 day of sailing at the midwinters that we ended up having. But yeah, you know, you want it to look a little more like that, like you're having fun. This was at Worlds. But in order to have fun and in order to, you know, realize whatever goals you want to achieve, whether they are, you know, I just want to be at the event and like I'm happy to show up and be there, or I'm trying to win an event, you know, we have to start with like before we even get to the event, which is logistics. I put this picture up because I had never taken a boat across the border before when I went to North Americans in 2022. So, you know, dealing with the Canadian border. So before I even go into an event, I like to think and say like, okay, am I traveling like not up and down I-95 or, you know, 80-90 getting back to the Midwest, like getting up to Canada. Who else went up there to the North Americans? Roger, were you there? Oh yeah, okay, but you didn't do the drive. So there is a crazy road. You're driving like back roads 90% of the way there. It's sketchy AF, and like there's part of the road where there's like this blind turn. There's all these signs for trucks. That's like, if you're a semi truck, you should turn around. Luckily, again, Jake Doyle, while we were in the pool at the yacht club, had been like, oh, you got to measure your trailer because of this turn and this tunnel. It's not a tunnel, it's like an overpass, but it's like this sharp turn. You're going downhill and then you're going up. And I was like, I think I'll be fine. Like, I'm not
What
that.
bridge is that, Kate?
This bridge?
Yeah, which one are you talking about?
Oh, I'm talking about like, it's not, I don't have a picture of it. It's like a piece of the road
Okay.
in upstate New York.
That's where she's from, that's what she's asking.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, like.
If
which
you
way were
Google,
going.
if you Google map, like going from here to Toronto, it's like probably 2 hours before you get to the bridge, the Peace Bridge.
What?
Before you get to
Peace
the
Bridge.
Peace Bridge to go to Canada.
Niagara
But
Falls.
it's this little stretch of road, and I was driving to Canada by myself. I got out of my car with a tape measure that I always keep with me, like a long tape measure, and I climbed up on top of my trailer and I measured from like the tippy top of my mast all the way down because I have a high trailer and I was real paranoid. I had just spent a bunch of money with Beasley and I was like, I don't want to fuck this up. So understanding the logistics and if they are different from your norm is just like, again, one really easy step in taking the stress out of going to regattas. Knowing where you're staying, this seems obvious, but I like to Google map things. My dad is the type, huh?
You print out the MapQuest things?
I wish I did, but like my dad is the type of traveler where like he goes to Europe and he has done so much research that when he gets off the train off like the underground and comes up in Paris. Like he knows which way to turn. Like people ask him for directions. Like my mom is just like, what's going on? So I get a little bit of that from him where I'm just like, I want to make this easy on myself because if it's easy on myself because I am the one towing the boat and doing all these things, that is something I'm not paying for. That makes my life easier and less stressful. So where am I staying? Where's the closest grocery store? We do our own lunches. This is a very specific casting couch thing. Like, where can we get hot wings? We're real big hot wing people. I'm pretty sure at the North Americans in Canada, we ate hot wings like 4 out of the 5 nights we were there at the exact same bar that was not far from our house. Yeah, do I have to cross the border or deal with weird roads? So that's just getting there, and the easier you can make that for yourself, the better. Yes. Thanks for asking a question.
What'd you do to prepare your trailer? How many people have had trailer failures?
Oddly enough, so one of my guys, Jeff Hayden, was moving our boat right after this the Bacardi event, and he blew out a trailer tire, and our spare was flat. So
Of course.
yeah, of course, and it was night, and he doesn't have AAA, and I'm like on the phone with AAA trying to see if he can use mine, and they're like, no, it covers you, FYI, not your assets. In case you didn't know that, I did not. But I will admit, like, I'm lucky. My husband is very well versed in traveling boats and preparing things, so he does do a lot of like making sure the trailer's good to go and things like that. But one of the things that Kevin Meyer actually had on him in Chicago, he was kind enough to move my boat from where I was storing it just to Belmont, in between 2 events down over there. And he has this little, like, you plug it in, you can plug it into your cigarette lighter, like air pump.
Mm-hmm.
I got one of those in our office, like, white elephant Christmas exchange. It was the most amazing thing ever. Everyone else is getting like these weird, like goofy little gifts or like, coffee cups or teapots. And I like traded around and I was like, I need this air pump real bad. And then everyone was like, why are you so into the air pump? Like there's Southwest like drink tickets and this, that, and the other. And I was like, I had plenty of those, but like, this is an asset to me. So I, foolishly, of course, did not have that in the truck, but I packed it in, actually, now that I think about it, I sent it down with Mike Coe, so it should have been in the truck. But putting that in the truck, having, being more diligent about checking things before you leave. I used to have a Mouse 24. I blew out like 3 trailer tires on that thing. It was also from like 1994, so not shocking. I would say having good AAA coverage is what I do to be very prepared. But yeah, I know we get the trailer maintained usually once a season,
Yep.
Especially before we travel. And I think for local reference, we take it to the guy that's like by the
Legendary.
airport. Is that who it is?
Chris.
Okay,
is
yeah,
legendary. Yeah, I take mine there.
yeah.
Anyone in this yard, your axles are water,
Yeah.
salt, so
Yeah, for sure.
before the first trip.
Mm-hmm.
Legendary?
Yeah, it's like if you're going to BWI and you come off to go onto like the little belt, the loop, it's like just on the left-hand side before you like peel off to go that way, which is not a good description. I don't know my road numbers. I just follow
I've got
Google
his
Maps
number
out
if
here.
anyone needs it.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
called Legendary what, trailer?
Yeah.
A
Okay.
cautionary, to add to this conversation, we bought our boat back in October, drove it back we bought it in Niagara. And,
Yeah.
Brought it back, had a blowout on the way back, and the spare was, it had air in it when we started, but apparently not enough to keep the tire up, so,
Yeah.
thank God for, AAA.
AAA, yeah, and you can go online and get AAA like in the moment, and it will cover you for that immediate incident. which is nice.
Thank you for being a member since 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That was a one plus, I would say. And you know, like we've driven the Star, like Alan's Star when he had one out to the West Coast and things like that, and like it is just a level of like for the $100 or whatever you pay, 150. It's like a level of comfort to know that like someone will come and get me. Especially honestly, like as a female that's doing it, I like. It's only 2 other women in the room, but if you ever have to drive the boat around by yourself, the more coverage, the better. Okay, so kind of went through getting there. This is more of once you're there, but we haven't even started the regatta. I modeled this probably around a larger event like a North American Championship or a Worlds. I like to give myself more time than not. So in events like that, you're having pretty much a day just for logistics. It's a day where you may or may not get out on the water, and you have to be comfortable with that. But it's important to not rush these things. So once you're there, I know how many people are going to Charleston next month? Okay, so do I know what the parking and launching situation is like? Is it tide dependent in Charleston? It can be tide dependent. So understanding the tide tables and what time of day I can launch my boat is annoyingly one of the reasons I probably don't go to Charleston anymore. But it can make or break a productive day for you if if you get there 45 minutes late and all of a sudden you're like, well, I can't get in the water for 3-4 hours. Like that really sucks. And that throws an entire wrench in your plan for the day. So understanding things like that, in Charleston, I know you guys, I wasn't at the planning for Charleston thing, but I'm sure you all heard like it's a bear to like launch and then actually get your boat over to the marina where, well, I guess the parties aren't really there anymore, but they're on the boat. And so I would say that Charleston is actually logistically one of the most complicated events in the country. But understanding what you have to do, where you have to go, so that, again, this is all about like making it less stressful. And then understanding the regatta requirements is also really important. Are there going to be sail measurements? Do I have to fill out a sail declaration form? The sail declaration form that the J70 class has is pretty easy. It's like a Google form online that you get sent leading into the regatta. The most important thing though is you have to put your tag number into the form. You may or may not know what sails you're planning on using till the day before the event. And this is one place where I falter in being organized, and I wish I was more organized and plan to be more organized. Having like all of these sail numbers in like a folder, so I'm not I'm not going down, digging in, unfurling my jib, like taking a picture, all those things, like unflaking my spare kite that I've like tightly compacted into my dry bag, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit, I gotta declare that, like undo it all. So having those like in an Excel file or something where it's like marked and labeled, you can see I wrote F4 on that in my phone because I clearly was like, oh, this is the F4. We were kind of going back. We had made a luff curve change on our mainsail before Worlds, and we were going back and forth between 2 mains till the day before we had to declare our sails. So having that organized and understanding like what you have to do is really important. And then also, like, is there a boat inspection? How many people have been through like a boat inspection? That's what I figured. It's stressful, right? I don't like it.
It's a process, there's no question.
It's a process.
And it's site dependent.
It is
So
extremely site dependent. At Worlds in St. Pete, we actually, I sent my guys to do the boat inspection, and I took they dropped me off at the sailing center, and I did the sail inspection.
Which, by the way, you got the much better end of the stick because
100%
I went
agree.
and did the sail inspection while we were waiting in line for the boat inspection, and I got back before they even moved the
Well, you wanna
trailer
know why
into
that
the
was?
spots.
You know, everyone in that room doing those inspections, it was all female. And I'm just gonna say, like, Paul knows, if you know me well, you know that I'm not like rah rah, women are like rule the world, though we do.
Clearly.
But it was alarming how efficient it was. And a lot of the people in the room, a lot of the women in the room, like, didn't necessarily know me, but they know Alan really well. He has sailed in St. Pete for years doing lightning sailing and stuff. And they were like, oh, say hi to Alan. They're like, how do you think we did? Do you think this is going well? Like, what? Do you think it's going well? And I was like, yeah, it's a bunch of women, like, measuring sails, being anal retentive about this. Yeah, it's going great. There was a German woman that was in charge. That's like a double win. Double win.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, it was really, it was the most organized and well done sail inspection I've ever been a part of. And I was very pleased to not be on the other side dealing with the boat inspection, though I heard that that also was pretty good.
It went very well. but
It's
it was
just
slower.
slow. They're looking at a lot of things. I will say, like, for Worlds specifically, you had to pick out your time slot to be inspected and stuff like that weeks before the event. We had been down there practicing and training for a couple days, and used the opportunity to do all of the inspection in the morning on a Sunday. And then I was like, guys, as much as I would love to go do straight line speed testing the billionth time, I think we would be better suited by, like, going and having brunch and having a day. And that's exactly what we did. And our training partner for the event was Will Wells, and two of the guys from North UK, Charlie and Rory Scott. And I was like, guys, we all had planned to get measured at the same time so we could go out on the water at the same time. And I was like, guys, how do you feel about mimosas? Like, doesn't that seem way better than going sailing? And they agreed, which is proof positive that, like, when you have these, like, long haul events, it's also really important to just, like, take a beat, take some time off, like, relax. We were saying, my family has a house on Davis Island, so we stayed on Davis Island actually during Worlds at St. Pete, which is a haul. It's about a 40-minute drive. But it also allowed us to just break away, not stay too long after racing every day. I could sit at the bar at St. Pete till all hours of the night if you let me, because I love that place, especially the Dazzler is there. And having to go back to Tampa was very helpful. We also had a pool, so that was nice. We were able to just, I mean, like, we spent the day after we measured just, frankly, just fucking off and having a good time. And it was necessary. You're putting a lot of pressure on yourself when you go and do these things. So the more you can have fun, again, while you're doing it, the better. So yeah, allocate time, divide and conquer.
What are they looking for on your boat when they do an inspection?
So everything. So Pete, I was gonna say, Pete, you could probably tell us the best as, like, the technical person, because you're a measurer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they want to know and inspect the boat for safety stuff, which is all easy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have the right equipment? And then they want to know, has your hull been modified in a way they consider illegal? The keel and the rudder. Those are pretty straightforward. We know who can do the work and stay legal and who can't. So you can ask Paul about that. Then they look at weird things, like the measurement between the boom and the main sheet block. And they're really
I can tell,
anal.
I can
There's
tell a
only
story about that too.
anal about that
Yeah.
measurement. And so you have to make sure you have the right measurement there. You can be shorter, but you can't be too long.
And you can't be too short,
Right.
because too short also is an advantage, and too long is actually a disadvantage. But the tolerance for, I'll sidebar about the main sheet strap, because we almost got kicked out of the North Americans in 2022, along with, like, the other top 4 boats.
For how many centimeters?
Less than less than 2 millimeters.
That gives you an idea how ridiculous it is.
It's insane.
And then they measure your pole split. Does it come out too far? And after that, it's pretty easy.
They also measure like the heel in every different
Yeah.
dimension imaginable. It's not even just how long it is, but like how far, like. how
They've
thick it
added
is.
that.
Yeah.
And that's because people spend so much money trying to find
Little ways.
a little bit here and there. So
then
they're
they weigh
getting
the boat,
better,
too.
but they still aren't where they could be.
Yeah.
So it's a little uneven, even for all that.
And then they weigh the boat, because
Mhm.
you gotta know how much boat.
Yeah.
And so that's important. If you don't know that your air pocket in the back and the front are dry, you're gonna get comfortable figuring that out. And that's a real important fact, that you must have those things dry. You must have your manager declaration manufacturing
Yep.
statement.
Yep.
And if you've done anything to the boat between the time you bought it and you go to this event, talk to Chris.
Yeah.
He's our chief guy, and he will help you sort that out. Don't wait till the day you're there.
Yeah. Chris is really good at, being
Helpful.
helpful, flexible. We got a new mast in December, and we went from having a Southern spar to a Selden spar, and the Selden spar is categorically heavier. So you're supposed to get reweighed after you do something like that. Chris was like, I know that your boat didn't get any lighter because you're adding something that's pounds heavier than what you're replacing. So he was signed off on it. Pretty cool about it. He's easy to work with. I would also say, and I didn't know this until I think the North Americans, the manager's declaration form is something that you have to keep on the boat while you're sailing.
What?
So yeah,
Really?
yeah, at North Americans and Worlds, you're required to have it. Like if they do a random inspection, they can ask to look at it. We were randomly inspected during Worlds, and they didn't look at it. All they did was, after racing, we went to the hoist and they pulled the boat and just looked at the keel and the rudder again. That's all. It's like 2 quick measurements and then back in the water and off we went. That was probably like the least stressful measurement was the pop inspection. But I will say, if you get if you have a Selden rig and you have the boom, the main sheet strop that comes stock with the boom is not spec'd properly. Like, you are being provided a strop that is not class legal. And that was something that became apparent up in Canada. They weren't measuring the main sheet strop at that event during the measurement. And we all went sailing the first day, which was like one of the windiest things I've ever done in my life. I think it was blowing like 40 by the time we were sailing in. It was insane. Maybe strops stretched. Oh. And then we showed up to the meeting the next morning, and ourselves and like 5 other boats, they were like, oh, we're going to protest you for yesterday. And like our goal for that regatta is like, if we can come out of day 1, which we know will be insanely windy, in the top 6, we could still win the regatta. And we were 6th. And I was just like, and now there's 25 boats here, 30 boats here, and you're going to disqualify the top 5 from 3 races? Like, that's insane.
Because of your main sheet drop?
Because ours was slightly too long. The other ones, they were all new, like recently purchased Selden rigs, and all those strops were too short.
But those were standard.
But that's what,
Manufacturer.
that's what the manufacturer was giving people.
Right.
So it's like even more of a it's such a, I don't want to say it's stupid, but it's it's such a small little thing. And ours was too long, which is a disadvantage to trimming the sail better. So like, we were only hurting ourselves. I actually got pretty heated about the whole thing I had just fired someone for the first time in my life too, so I was like pretty ramped up about like getting what I want. Like at work, I had fired someone that needed to be let go, and I was like, I can fucking handle this. And I couldn't find Chris Howell, couldn't find him, and I called him and I got on the phone with him before we left the dock in the morning, and I was like, here's the deal. NORs are pretty vague about whether or not inspectors can be on your property without you being present. I personally think it's legally up to interpretation. And for certain, I cannot stand on a dock and tell the difference between 2 millimeters. So it's my opinion, completely my opinion, that the measurer got on our boat while I wasn't there, while none of my crew was present, measured my strop, and then decided that they were gonna kick us out of 3 races. And I just was like, if that's gonna be the case, like I'll pack my boat up and go home. Like one of my guys' wife was pregnant, like 8 months pregnant at the time. Like we all have things we can be doing, and like again, we're here because we love the sport and we want to have fun. And like you are making it categorically not fun for me right now. And we ended up not getting protested. No one got protested. Everyone just changed what they had. Like no one was maliciously, if you're maliciously adjusting your main sheets drop, like got other problems to be dealing with, I think. So, are there any other questions about the inspection process? I know I delved real deep into the strop thing.
You or anyone else here deal with the Delrin issue?
I've never dealt with one.
What do you mean, Delrin issue?
Well, I just was reading some stuff at the Nationals, and I watched Dave Shaney just curse and struggle for like a week trying to get his set up properly. But that's that. And
So if the these are the chocks that keep the keel centered and not too deep and not too high.
Mm-hmm.
Those chocks are aging.
Yeah.
And it takes somebody more competent than me to install them in such a way that they are aligned perpendicular to the mast and in column, if you will, with the rudder.
Yeah.
And
Parallel with.
Parallel.
Yeah.
And then you want the right depth that's legal. And Fury Cell 22 sells new chocks. I think they're $400.
Mm-hmm.
And if you decide to replace them, I would get a competent person to do it.
Yeah.
No disrespect to Dave, but it's a hard job.
yeah,
It's really
He
difficult.
spent a lot of time shaving them down and getting them to be right, because out of the
Yeah.
box, they're not exactly what they're supposed
Yeah.
to be.
And every, they're building the boats in mass. Like every keel box is going to be slightly different. I mean, it's a J
That's the
boat.
thing that people have to
And
realize.
Yeah, it's not, no one boat is exactly the same, as much as we all would love to think that that's the case. If you get a boat that goes in, that's like built right around Christmas, I only learned this when I started dating Alan. The last J70 he purchased brand new, which was like the 1085, I think. He was like, I want a boat that's going in the mold right before you guys leave for Christmas, because it's sitting and curing longer. Everyone's on holiday. Like they're not popping the boat out. Now they're not building boats in the US right now, so it doesn't matter, but it's like, you can be very, but it just goes to prove like a boat that's built in December when people are leaving for break is going to be, at least people think it's going to be that much stiffer, that much whatever, because of the timing. So, but it's a J boat. Okay, so we've gotten to the venue. We've measured our sails. Other things that are important are really understanding the venue. What are typical weather patterns for the time of year? This is something that for the Worlds, we actually, and I don't think this is a picture of, I know it's not a picture of the actual weather during Worlds. I think this was the weather in St. Pete like 3 days ago. but we looked at, you can go on like the NOAA website, or there's a guy in Cleveland, Lake Erie WX. Mark Thornton is like an awesome weather guy, and he has a lot of like links to anything you could possibly need sailing weather related. And we looked at historical data for that time of year for Worlds, because we wanted to know if we needed to be lighter or heavier. It was actually like a big decision that we started thinking about in probably like February, and the regatta wasn't until October. But we're like, what's the chances of it being really windy? What are the chances of it being really light the whole time? Like, what are my percentage odds, so that like we're, you know, do we have to gain weight? Do we have to lose weight? Like Nick Turney was trimming jib and kite. He had a weigh-in regatta like before Worlds that he had to drop weight for about a month before Worlds. And then he was like purpose gaining weight after that, so that we were like set up to not be too light for Worlds. So, yeah.
Could you provide numbers for everyone?
Yeah.
And what do you mean by wind range and numbers? That would help a lot of folks.
So, I would say like anything more than 12 knots is starting to be like on the, if it's 12 knots and above, like that in my mind is like on the windier side. Obviously, if it's, you know, 18 to 20, that's like windy, and I want to be like as heavy. If it were 18 to 20, like 80% of the time, I probably would have had different people on the boat, purely because we would not have been heavy enough. My team for Worlds, it was me, Jackson Benvenuti, who's not too big. Like I was the biggest person on the boat, by far. Not by far, but you know. Jeff Hayden, it was probably 200 at the time. Nick was probably 170. And I can't remember what Jackson was weighing, but the point was like we typically hovered around 740 as a crew, and we were like, if we can go into this event being 760, like that's okay, as opposed to, you know, a lot of times like trying to cut weight and do things for different classes. Lovely J70 doesn't make you weigh in, thank God. But it was something that we were like, we're putting a lot of effort into this, so what are the variables that we can filter out? And weight is one of them. And that has to do with what the weather pattern is. So that's something we looked at well in advance. Does that answer, did I answer the question?
You came close.
All right, what?
So I heard the target was 740. I didn't know the wind that you targeted that for.
We targeted that for like the 12 to 14 knot range.
Okay.
And I would say we had sailed at 740. I think we targeted 760 for that event, because it was likely to be on the windier side. But there was more of an opportunity for breeze that time of year in St. Pete,
Right.
which like no one, when the regatta was announced that it would be there, everyone was like, oh, St. Pete's the worst. There's going to be no wind. Well, there's no wind in February when we go sailing there, but like there's wind there. It's a different time of year. So that answered the question. So other things to think about when you're going to a venue, have I sailed there before? And do I have notes? When I was a junior sailor, many moons ago, because I'm almost 40, I was like a really diligent note taker. Every time I would go to a regatta, I sailed lasers, so I was by myself. I have this little notebook, and it has the conditions, like wind direction, wave state, where I went on the race course, how it played out. Like it was a logbook, a journal that I still to this day, if I'm sailing like somewhere like Buzzards Bay is a great example of a place that like I haven't sailed there since I was a junior sailor. We were sailing there for one thing last summer during like the New York Yacht Club cruise. We went in and out of Buzzards Bay. And I was like, well, I'm gonna look at my notes and at least see like, oh, is this a similar direction? And like, how did the breeze build over time? And those were notes from like 20 years ago. But I'm not as diligent as I used to be, probably because I have like a real job and not just going sailing all the time. But taking notes, I think, is it is one thing that I have committed myself to for 2024 is being a better note taker. So do I have notes? If I haven't sailed there before, do I know people that have sailed there before? Paul was kind enough to let me come and do this presentation because I have to, well, I was invited to do some coaching in Switzerland in April, and I have never been to Switzerland to go sailing before. It's basically like inter-club racing, but on J70s. So they were like, we want a woman who knows J70s. Like, will you come and do this? And I was like, free trip to Switzerland. Okay. But I was like, oh, I've never sailed here before. It's on one of these like skinny little lakes that's in the northern, half of the Alps. Like it's closer to fly to Milan, even though I'm flying to Zurich, but like Milan is closer to this lake than Zurich is, type thing. But I've talked to a couple people that have done a lot of sailing over in Europe, and they're like, oh, I've got this friend, they've sailed there before, and they've put me in touch with people. So at least I can go in with a base idea of like what typically happens in this space. I think it's way better than going in blind. And I think the other great part about sailing is if you haven't sailed in a venue before, but you know people that have, they're going to be open and honest with you about what the venue is like. Like no one's that big of a guarded jerk to like not tell you. So definitely ask people if you haven't been there before. And then knowing like where on the map the racing will take place. A lot of times like you'll know this at least a couple days ahead of time, or you can ask the people that are running the event, hey, where are you? Like when we sailed the St. Pete Nude last year, we asked like, hey, where are we going to be running Worlds? Is this a venue? Like, is this the spot on this bay where we're going to be sailing? And then they had us probably more in this general area for the Nude, and we probably sailed Worlds more in here. So close, but not precisely. And then at pre-Worlds, we actually sailed way closer to here, which was, I don't think that was very helpful, but very different. So understanding where you're going to be so that you can understand the like very nuanced differences between like being here versus being there. There's more shore component when you're sailing closer in. St. Pete is weird because there's also underwater, there's like a plateau. So it's like, I have like a napkin drawing that Alan made for me the first time I sailed there. And he's like, oh, and the water just kind of it drops off the side of this plateau. So your course could be like half on it, half off of it, depending on where you are on the bay. So understanding what the race course is generally going to look like, where it's going to be set up. Again, like when you're putting all the effort in, it's little things like that that can make a difference. And lastly, like weather homework, what apps you have that are being updated every 15 minutes now. Like you can really drill down to see like how accurate is the model compared to what I'm experiencing. And you can start to tell if the model is forecasting fast or slow. You can really use that to your advantage. I love weather, so I also love to just like go and look at the NOAA stuff and get like a long range, big picture idea. I would dive more into that if it was more gearing up for like an offshore race. But for the purpose of this, like if I'm going, J70 sailing, luck grip is what I'm looking at all the time. And I'm HRR nothing. like, unless you really feel like like you've been following the weather for a week or two and you really feel like, oh, the GFS is forecasting way more accurate than the European model, like that's when I break away from it, yes.
I'm not a weather
Yeah.
lover like that. What is HRR?
It's a high resolution rapid refresh.
Okay.
It's one of the models that the government puts out that there's that model and there's like a sub 15 HRR that the HRR normal one will update every hour. The sub 15 updates every 15 minutes. And it's like very detailed, which is very nice.
And you go directly to it, you don't need to go through an interface.
And like the luck grid, like I said, it makes it really easy to just like pick your model, download it. It'll download it where you are. And the one thing that it also has is like it has a little like geolocator. So when you're sitting on your boat and you're sitting at the race course, you can press the button and it puts you on the map. So then you can see like, because there's nuanced differences, like you can see precisely where you are. And that I really like. Because otherwise I'm just kind of like, yes. Yeah. 10 out of 10 for it. We have not even started going sailboat racing at this point, by the way. And I am shocked and impressed that I've been talking to you all for so long. And thank you for asking all the questions because it makes everything a lot easier. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, took Sunday off, sailed Monday, the regatta started Tuesday, I believe. By the time the regatta happened, I actually didn't have to take the leave because my body was like finally used to like, hey, you're going sailing every day. And I was like, oh, this is what it's like to be an athlete. I don't have to take my leave. But
one thing that I would add with stretching is warm up a little bit before you stretch, because stretching cold, you can do more damage than actually otherwise.
stay in my bed where I'm toasty warm and I do a little leg. I don't know if that's when I'm cold or not.
The blood moving through your muscles
Yeah.
is really what you're looking for there. So,
I'm learning something now.
there you go.
Thank God.
Yeah. So, go for a walk, do something. You see people swinging their legs and like waving their arms
Mhm.
around. That's to get the muscles warmed up before they stretch. And that's
Thank
a
God.
good-
Thank God I got this advice.
yeah, that's a good key, especially as you start to age a little bit like us.
You don't look like you're much older than 40 either, so.
I turned 50. in September. So
He's
I'm
doing
still
really
one
great
of the young ones
stretching.
in this crowd.
Doing really great stretching.
I'm still one of the young ones in this crowd, but that's 12, 15 years of triathlon.
Damn. I don't like running, so that's, yeah. That's fair. Other things to be sorted, lunches made. Chris Larson yelled at me when I told him that I make the lunches. He was like, you should be working in the morning. He was like, you're in charge. Like, other people should be making the lunches. It's like, you're paying this money. Like, you shouldn't be making lunches. You should be checking your emails. Like, you're gone for so long. It's not like you can just leave work behind. Like, I have to sign all of our contracts. That's like part of my job. And just because I'm sailing doesn't mean I'm not signing contracts. He was like, I can't believe you make lunch. And I was like, well, here's the thing. Like, for me, it's very cathartic. And I know I'm getting something that I like. Laura Grondrin also makes the lunches for the Dark Energy. We've had many a conversation about how we are in charge of lunches. So, I like a good wrap. I also discovered halfway through the season, I was like, Jeff, would you like me to make you 2 wraps? I was like, yes, Kate. I was like, you're a growing boy, you're 25, you need 2 wraps a day. Some people are just like, wait, I used to sail with this French woman, and when whenever any girl would like meet a guy, she was like, well, I'd say if one chicken man or two chicken men. If you were cooking for them, would they have one chicken or two? How many would you have to make? And I was like, Jeff's a two chicken kind of guy, so I made him 2 laps. But so during the lunch is made process, this is also like getting my 4 beers. So we have a really sweet little lunch cooler. It's Igloo brand. I bought it at Target. It is small, and it's got like a separate lower pocket. I bought these flat, flexible little freezer things, little icy things, packets. When Jeff plugs in the batteries at night, he also puts our ice packets in the freezer. And then the next morning, I put the beers in, put the ice packs on top of it, I close it, and then I pack the lunches. I also bring like Oreos and crap because, you know, we don't just want to be eating Cliff Bars all day. So, if you know the venue is like the water line's going to be a pain because many times there's only one place to fill up a water bottle and there's like 80 boats trying to all fill up their water bottles. Fill up your water bottles at home. Have a breakfast plan, have it the night before, make sure everyone knows what time they're getting up, all that good stuff. Nick is really great at making breakfast if he hasn't made breakfast yet for you, Paul.
That's Chef Andy's job.
Oh, well, Nick's really good at breakfast. I'm just saying, just put it out there. He would make us breakfast sandwiches in the morning before we would leave, and then we'd eat them in the car on the way to the venue. Get an idea of the weather. This is not a precise idea of the weather, but more like, do I have to bring my spray gear with me? Are we staying at the venue after sailing? Do I want to bring a change of clothes? I forgot a change of clothes the last day of Worlds. You know, when there's like an awards ceremony and a party. Forgot my clothes. Just wasn't thinking about it. I don't like wearing shorts. That's like all I had with me. I'm just adverse to shorts. I am a black pants girl, and I actually like showered, took my black pants that I had worn sailing, like rinsed them off in the shower, and then I went to the bar and I found one of the ladies that works there that I had gotten to know people there. Actually, people at St. Pete think I'm a member. When they saw me at the nudes this past month, they were like, why haven't we seen you? And I was like, well, I'm not a member here. And they're like, no, you are. And I was like, no, I'm definitely not. Even the manager thought I was a member.
That's a good problem.
It is a good problem. I was like, I was like, I don't know what I've done to deserve this.
Charge this to the ambulance.
But I actually asked one of the women that works there, one of the servers, I was like, do you guys have like an industrial dryer on site? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, here's the deal. I have some pants that are in the ladies' room in the secret bathroom. And she was like, we'll throw them in the dryer for you. Come back in like 30 minutes. And they were hanging up. They dried my pants for me. Like that's service. Amazing.
That's St. Pete.
At St. Pete. It's a fantastic venue. But moral of the story is don't forget what you're wearing so you don't have to ask for favors like that. And then obviously, like before the regatta starts, before it's the morning of the first day, read the sailing instructions. It's not that hard, but some of them have special provisions in them. Is there going to be a meeting in the morning? North Americans and Worlds, any events like those will have meetings in the morning. And it's really critical that people are there. Again, it's like a divide and conquer thing. 2 of us would go to the meeting. 2 of us would go to the boat and sort the boat out in the morning while the other people were at the meeting. A lot of times it's just like the chief umpire reaming on you guys on the fleet for like sailing more fair. Gotta go to the meeting, so. All right. It's the practice day. It's still not actual race day. So I like to have a plan for the practice day. I like to have a training partner. If you can have someone consistent throughout a season, that's even better because you're growing together and you're learning together. We did a lot of training partner work with the Imperia. And then we also, like I said, at Worlds, we were kind of working with them a bit, and also working with Will Wells. Because he doesn't sail the boat that much, so yeah, but it was great to have both of them in that situation. But having a training partner and making sure that like you and your partner have a plan. If you have a coach, great. But if you don't have a coach, like you don't need one. I did not have a coach and worked out just fine. Plan on when you're leaving the dock. Plan on a radio channel that's not like the regatta channel, just so that you can communicate. And then like what you're doing with your partner can vary, but like I like to keep this to 2 hours, maybe 3. Like you just become brain dead after a while, especially the driver. Like driving the boat takes so much focus that like you'll get exhausted, you'll get mentally exhausted, and that's not what you want going into an event. So limit the amount of time. It's really easy to spiral and waste time and keep doing something. But try and limit it, even though that seems counterintuitive sometimes. And then like plan the drills that you want to do also before you leave the dock. So I always start out with straight line testing, just making sure that you're both up to speed and pretty even. If you're not even with your training partner, that's not really going to be helpful. So once you're up to speed, like we like to have a conversation with whoever we're training with about, where are your jib leads located? Where are you at on the rig? Just how you're sailing the boat in general. Any sort of like adjustment, where's the traveler for the main sheet? All those little things, like have the conversation with your partner so that, and then try the adjustments. Like if you're not set up exactly the same, and one boat's going slightly faster, obviously like make that adjustment to what they're doing, see if it works for you. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. Your partners might be a different weight. They might, like, we had a southern rig for Worlds. Our partner had a Selden rig. So there's a lot of differences that can go into it, but like try and make it as similar as possible so that you can get the most out of your testing and your training. I love doing a lee bow drill, which is basically just like let's say we're going off on port tack and we've decided that we're about the same speed and we're all comfortable. Like the windward boat will tack off. So you'll split tacks for 30 seconds, a minute, however long you decide. And then you tack back at each other, and the boat coming, that would be the port tack boat, sorry. Their job is to lee bow the starboard tack boat. And then you try and live there as long. And then you split tacks again. And you just keep coming back at it. The lee bow drill, like, it gets you really comfortable with how you have to tack the boat to maintain like the closest, separation. Like how can I get really close without hitting the other boat, still maintaining speed, becomes really, really important at the windward mark if you're coming in on the port tack lay line, which I think is like the strongest place to come in to a windward mark. So like the more that you can practice that so that it becomes natural and routine, the better. So I like to do that every day because every day the conditions are different. Like the wave state's different. How you're tacking the boat is going to be slightly different than it was the day before. So big fan of the lee bow drill. And then, yeah.
The boat that gets camped on,
Mm-hmm.
how long do you stay in that lee bow position, or do they learn something and adjust if you talk about that?
So that's a good question. Normally, like if I was the boat that was getting lee bowed, I would stay in that position until I felt like I was starting to lose. So that could be 10 seconds, it could be a minute. But as soon as I feel like I don't have this anymore, that's when I'd tack away and you'd start the drill again. Unless you've decided as
You gotta keep going.
a team here, like between the two boats, hey, every time we meet and tack, we're gonna, within 10 seconds, we're gonna separate again. And that's really like, am I practicing holding my lane or am I practicing the lee bow exchange? And there's a lot of value to both, obviously.
I imagine also being able to kind of hang there
Yeah.
is an important thing. Because
Exactly.
sometimes you just have to eat shit for a little while before you
Totally.
can get around, you know, if you're
Yeah.
trying to get to a side of the course or get around a mark or whatever that may be.
Right. And it's important to practice like hanging there and trying to then build the separation. Like if I'm the windward boat that's getting lee bowed, like what am I, as they're tacking, what am I doing? As they're coming in, am I putting my bow down a little so that I have room to come up, so that I have room to build that space? Is really an important aspect of it too. So it's obviously not just for the lee bow, it's for the windward boat as well. And that's something that like you just have that conversation of like, hey, we're doing this drill for this, or we're gonna hold on every time we tack, we're gonna hold on for a minute. But honestly, like it's pretty easy to do that drill and not even have to talk to the other boat, to just be in it and then decide to tack away and just keep whatever rhythm you're doing. And then also very important to, at a certain point, switch. Yeah. Otherwise, only one boat's getting good at lee bowing and only one boat's getting good at making separation.
Do you guys usually sail with one or two radios?
Two, unless we throw one in the water, which happened twice. So,
Yeah, we found a lot of value in having a second radio
Yeah.
because you can also hear the back channel
Yes.
during the races.
Yeah.
You know, where they're talking about moving marks. And
yeah,
stuff like
we
that.
sail with two radios. We sail with two Velocitechs. So like at Worlds, there was a midline boat. So there were technically like two starting lines. And you know, it's hard enough to get one starting line perfect. Imagine having two. And the mid boat was a giant catamaran. So it was moving around a fair amount. We would be very confident in what side of the line we were going to start on. I'd say 85 to 90% of the time. So we'd only ping one side. But what we did with our other Velocitech was we sewed a little spot in our bag, in our spinnaker bag, in the pocket, and we put the other Velocitech there. It wasn't perfect by any means. I'm not suggesting that it was, because it was still swinging around a bit. But if we thought that we wanted to be somewhat in the middle, we would ping both sides of the line. So and then in the moment, you'd know which box to look at. Like, okay, we're going this way. We're starting on the port end of the line. Like, I'm looking at the other box. It wasn't the perfect method, but it worked.
Yeah, we actually pinged both ends of the line. Kind of made a determination as to which side of which port or starboard side of the starting line we want to start on, and then we re-ping based
Yeah,
on
a lot of
center
people
of
do that
yeah.
too. Yeah.
And that worked out okay.
Yeah.
But you're right, that catamaran, man, that sucker moved a lot. The current was a lot.
Well, and like the line is only as good as the moment it's set. It's never like that again. So, yeah.
So on those big starting lines, does line bias ever become a factor?
Absolutely.
Mhm. Because you figure
Because you're talking what, like a half mile?
your line's half a mile,
Yeah.
so one boat length
So if you're in a
bias.
position where, you know, you have a bias towards one side, but favored in on the other, I mean.
You have to make a decision on what, on what the priority is.
Okay.
And that's,
You throw on
it can yeah, you have to really either line has to be really biased one way to convince me to not go to a favored side of the course, or you know,
Thanks.
more breeze on one side. There's so many factors that can, but it definitely makes the decision more stressful. Like, I'll put it that way. It definitely makes the decision a
Isn't
little.
that Jackson's problem?
Yeah, it's Jackson's problem. Exactly.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah. Obviously, is there a practice race? Plan for that if you want to do it. Sometimes we do sometimes we do the practice races, sometimes we don't. It really depends on just how exhausted we are at that point. I like to do one practice race if possible, just to like get the vibe of the fleet on the start line. I would say that's like the most important part of the practice race for me. And then, the other drill that I meant to talk about is like a speed up starting drill. Paul, I'm sure you've done this with Nick because he's so into it and I love it. We do a like a little starting drill. We use the Velocitech, make a fake line. So we'll ping a pretend boat, bear off 90 degrees, ping a pretend pin, and then we'll start at like 3 minutes. We'll just do
So you use the distance of the line or time of the line?
both. Well, no, distance. Sorry. I was like, time to the line. I don't even know where to find that on my box.
Sidecar line is in the Caros.
Oh, I don't have one of those. Sorry. It's so small. It's hard for me to read, honestly.
I imagine what's gonna happen when you get over 40.
I know. It's all gonna go downhill. Pretty
You
sure.
said there was a way to program the Velocitech to do, I don't know if he's talking about the older one or the newer one.
You can read it. That was my concern. That
Yeah.
It is so small. I can read it, so it's.
Okay.
The Vaqueros has actually got a really nice layout.
Yeah.
I'm really good friends with the guy that does the Velocitech, so we're Velocitech people.
Stay with what you.
Yeah, we got it, we know which side our bread is buttered on. But the speed up starting drill, set a 3 minute line, and then you just do a 3 minute starting practice. And really the most important part of the starting drill is knowing how long is it going to take me to speed up and get to the line. Like, if we're normally pulling the trigger at 30 seconds, is 30 seconds actually enough time to get me to the line with no other boats around? Is there current? Is it wavy? Is it light? Is it heavy? Is it smooth? Like, so many different factors. How do I know and balance the time to go versus the distance to the line? And that gives me as a driver like a really good notion of balancing the time and distance. Because at the end of the day, that all boils down to me, the driver. Like, doesn't really matter what's happening if I don't understand that relationship. I had something else to say there. Shoot. It'll come to me later. I'm sorry. Post-practice debrief. I definitely do that with my training partner if possible. We always do a little debrief on the way in with our viewers, talk about it the day, and then try and talk with our training partners after sailing to say like, hey, what did you notice? What did I notice? What do we think tomorrow is going to be like? This is, I put this, I have so many photos that look exactly like this, and it's really hard to I know when Alan looks at them, he's seeing all sorts of things, and I look at them and I'm just like, cool, boats from behind. But this was I think this was during pre-worlds, doesn't really matter, but this is the Imperia on the bottom, this is us on the top. I put this on here because they had a regular F4, and we were starting to experiment with a little bit more luff curve, and or a little less luff curve, I should say. And you can see like the difference between our profiles, and just like at the top, our sail is a little more open. We have a little more twist generally than they had. I think we were probably sheeting just slightly less. I can't tell where the traveler or anything like that is, but the people that I sail with love to look at pictures like this. So if you have the opportunity to have a coach out on the water, or not even a coach, just a friend who's out watching that can take photos, like if you're not hiring a coach, like the self-analysis is super important. So, you know, we were able to download all these pictures and go look at them. Like, during pre-worlds, Kristen Berry was out on the water. He had drone footage. He uploaded it all for everyone that was there. So we would sit at home and just watch the drone footage while we were having dinner and just kind of talk about what was happening and what we noticed on other boats, because you're so focused on what you're doing in the moment, you're not really paying attention to like, oh, hey, that guy got this weird shift out here, and I wonder if that's going to happen again, or look how he's sailing the boat more bow down, or all sorts of different things that you'll just naturally start to notice. And I mean, we're really lucky that Kristen's out there like all the time with tons of footage. From a perspective of our fleet here, we're extremely lucky because we get that on, you know, a weekly basis during the summer pretty much. So, any more questions about practice day? I feel like practice day is really important.
So,
yeah.
thing that you practice on practice day, how does that differ from the day of racing practice?
Oh, I'm going into the day of racing practice next. It's probably a willingness to try more. You can just experiment a little more than you might be able to on like the morning of. You have more time to do those things. It's funny, I didn't talk about any downwind stuff in this. We obviously do go downwind, but maybe it's because I did a lot of sail testing this year, so I just feel like I have a lot more upwind in my brain. Yeah, no worries.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Yeah, I think when it comes to like actual race day, like I want to go out sailing. I want to make sure I'm going fast, and then I want to like have a minute. So there's just more time to think about things a little more outside the box. I think that's what's different. Getting out to the race course. So again, routine and make it the same every time. We try to dock off approximately 1 hour before the first warning. If it is an extremely long sail out to the race course, obviously adjust that. We meet up, we try and leave the dock at the same time as our training partner if possible. And we certainly meet up after you get to the race committee boat and check in. We do probably just a minute or two of speed testing, kind of dial in, make sure you're on the same page and you feel good. And then, and this is a great time to have the separate radio so that you're on your little separate channel, but can still hear what the race committee is talking about. Pardon me. And then split tacks and go upwind. And like we usually will say, we're gonna split tacks for 3 minutes. And then at 3 minutes, like we'll set a watch, and at 3 minutes we'll tack back and we'll see who's ahead. And that just gives you a really good idea of generally what side of the course is gonna be favored. You could come back together pretty dead nuts even, which is also a good indicator. But there's also gonna be times where it's like, so you have more confidence in what your plan might be to attack the first race. And then after we meet at the top, we meet at the cross, and then we'll do the same thing downwind. We'll set, we'll split jives, go 3 minutes, jive back. I saw your mouth open. I thought you were going to say something. And then at the bottom, we just talk about what we learned, talk about what we're seeing. I think it's really nice, especially for the tacticians, to have someone off the boat to talk to. Like, we're talking to each other so much throughout the day, and you can't talk to your coach. Like, having another person outside to confirm or refute what you're seeing and have a conversation about it, I think is really, really important. Like, the first regatta that we did that with Imperia, I felt like we were just that much better. And I really think it's because Jackson and Zeke, like, they're really good friends, and they were just able to have a rapport that was unique to them and confirm some things. And like, John Heaton's like, how were you driving the boat? This is what I was doing. So like, now we're having a conversation. We're just floating around next to each other. So again, it doesn't take long. This is probably 20 minutes of time at the most. But I think it's really, really important, and it gives everyone on the boat confidence going into the day. And then we definitely break often and do the same speed up drill, just because, you know, current conditions, wave state, etc., can all change. And while we're doing that, I work on figuring out, like, I always call out as we're getting really slow in that final like minute to go. I always say, like, I'm losing it, which is like, okay, we're at max slow. The slower you can go and have control, the better. I think at about like 2 knots of boat speed is where most people will start to like lose the helm. So being able, and it'll be slightly different by like a couple tenths of a knot, depending on the wave state and depending on current. So understanding for the day, or for at least the first start, how slow can I go and how slow is too slow is really, really important. And it's going to help you as a driver and everyone else on the boat kind of judge that final 60 seconds to go. And then get your pings, relax, talk about the race course, check your weather again. Our conditions vary from the forecast, etc. And hydrate. Don't forget to hydrate. I sometimes forget to hydrate. Different venues, I think, require more hydration. Miami is extremely hot. There is something about Miami that I feel like I have to drink more water there and put on more sunscreen. Just constantly stay hydrated.
Yeah, that's one thing you didn't mention, but it seems that we should, you know, make sure that you're bringing lots of sunscreen while you're.
Oh, yeah. Like, I just keep sunscreen on the boat. Bring lots of sunscreen. That is like, I want to say it's a no-brainer, but I used to sail without shoes on, and I actually like was sailing a Bacardi Cup and my feet were burning going down the final run. And I was like, I cannot wait to finish because I cannot wait to put sunscreen on my feet. Like, the tops of my hands were burning. Like, just lots of sunscreen. Guys, I'm finally going to show a video and not wake everyone up a little. I talked about a 3-minute routine, and I wanted to dive into this slightly more because this goes to the case of having routine and having repeatability. This is now, we're going racing, and we have our starting plan. And the starting plan is always a 3-minute routine. It never changes, really. And this is like what's become known as like the Bill Hardesty method for starting. I've asked other pros. I asked Victor over the winter. I was like, Victor, what's your starting routine? What's your method for starting? And he was like, oh, I just did like what Bill does. And I was like, oh, okay. Everyone does this kind of thing. So at 3 minutes, you want to be on starboard in the area of the line where you're wanting to start. So if you're wanting to start on the boat third, at 3 minutes, you want to be on starboard tack. You don't have to be on the line, but you want to be like in that train that's close to the line, approximately where you want to be. You continue on starboard for 45 seconds, and then you jibe around at 2:15. You go back, and then you tack at 1:15, which you'll be in the general space where you want to start, and you can spend the last 60 seconds of the start working towards the line slowly and pulling the trigger and starting. It seems like so simple. It obviously is not so simple when there's a bunch of other boats that may or may not want to be in the same spot that you are. But what it does is it helps create systematic, automatic reactions. And the more that you can keep things, and you can take this routine, you can put it on any end of the line, like it will work. And it will generally put you where you want to be. I will show a video now, I hope. So this is 1 minute to the first start at Worlds. And you can see how many people, how far away from the line people are.
Who do we have down here? Do we have any of the big guys? Hooligan and
I just put this up there to show.
Oh no, that's my boat. Huh.
It's
41 is sail 22.
this like slow progression to the line,
Rowdy's
and then
down
the
here.
ability to control in the slow mode, whether your jib's out or your jib's not out. Worlds was a jib out event. Like the whole time everyone was jib out going.
See if we get clean. We see some boats driving away at the far
It's
end.
really, really.
This is a U flag. Course is 350. Definitely.
And then,
Boats over, I would call on the
so that was the gun.
other side.
And then, doesn't look like
See
this
what
out
we
in
find
view.
out.
What I also thought was so interesting after watching this was how quickly boats got shot out. So the other thing that I took away from watching this was not only do I want to be on the line,
Run into each other. So you have
like,
derecho
I
and
want to be going full speed at the line.
Soul tacking away.
So how much time, like, and in that speed up drill, you kind of get the idea, okay, it's taking me 10 seconds to get to full speed. It's taking me 15 seconds to get to full speed. So it's just another piece of data to understand when do I have to pull the trigger so that I'm going full speed, because you could be 30 seconds in and already be in 50th place if you're not.
So we're underway. It's quiet right now. No individual flag goes up on a U flag, so you'll never see that.
This is
So
almost,
we'll report if anyone is over.
but anyway. So the other thing about starting is what are the comms and who's doing what at the start. Obviously, I focused a lot about the driver being focused on the distance to the line, maintaining separation for options, and then any threats. My trimmer is looking out for threats. My main sheet tactician also looking out for threats. I am trying to be more self-aware and also look for threats. I think that comes with confidence. So the more that you're doing it, the more that everything becomes natural with holding the tiller and knowing the times and the distances, the more I'm able to look outside the boat in those moments, in that like last 60 seconds. I have the bow person calling time to go. Also, this is something I learned at pre-worlds, I think. It's also kelp cutting in the last minute. Like, Jackson was like, hey, JBC, like, can you make sure that we are kelp cutting in under a minute? And he goes, Jackson, I've been kelp cutting at 45 seconds since North Americans in Canada. And like, but it took us till Worlds to realize that he's always doing it. It's because he has long gangly arms, so it's like we barely even notice that he's doing it. But it seemed, you know, even if there's not kelp in the water, even if it's just peace of mind. And then the trimmer is obviously keeping the boat pacing up or down. Second set of eyes for threats. I actually don't have anyone call distance to line because I'm looking at that. It becomes too much chatter for me. Some people like it. I just personally don't. And then the main sheet trimmer tactician is like executing the plan, verbalizing threats, and they're really calling when we're pulling the trigger and going. That's how we work things on our boat. I don't know, is that similar to what other people are doing? Mm-hmm.
We pace with the boats around us.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I like to pace with the boats around me unless,
There are exceptions, but.
yeah, unless it's getting real tough. I'll let other people be over before I'm over, I guess. That's the only kind of exception. And we have had times where and you're just kind of, now you're struggling a little more off the line. But I also think, and I didn't include this anywhere, but like, if you lose it off the line, don't be afraid to tack. Like, even if you're tacking away from the side of the course you wanted, like a clean lane is critical. And at a certain point, if you're going, if you're going 5-9 instead of 6-1, it doesn't matter. You got to tack away. Like, you want to be going as fast as you need to be going. So, this is just more about communication. I'm not a tactician, so I don't focus on those types of decisions. I love communication. I study public relations. I think communication is like the best thing in the world. So communication needs when we're going up the course, they're going to be pretty similar to going down the course too. But who's communicating conditions, pressure, breeze direction, waves? That's usually our bow person. I would also like to say that I got this piece of advice a long time ago from Dawn Riley. She came to coach my big boat team. Even if you are a person on the boat that's not confident in your ability to call the waves or to call the wind, but like on a boat of 4 people, like someone's got to do it, just start doing it. The driver, the people around you, we're all going to start to recognize, oh, so-and-so is usually like a second or 2 off. And we'll know, and we'll start to compensate. But you're not going to get any better if you're not trying. So even if you're not confident in something, just try it and do it for a while. He has like plays, and he just knows like, oh, if we're at this point in the race course and we're in this position and we're at a cross with, a person that's, we're all in the top 3, like this is what I'm going to do automatically. If we're coming in on port ley line, this is what I'm going to do in this situation. My brain doesn't operate that way. But he makes the game as simple as possible for himself by knowing if situation X is occurring, I want to do Y. So it's again part of routine though. What are remarks? Room for opportunity. I'm going to show like 3 different ley line situations in the videos. And if anyone was, the last one is a very good description of the dangers of coming in on a port tack ley line. But again, mark roundings, be descriptive and adaptive. When I sail with Alan and he's trimming the main, he pulls the kite up, so I hold the main sheet when we go around the windward mark. That was not the case when I sail with Jackson. When I sail with Jackson, he trims the main and Nick hoists the kite, and Jackson holds the kite sheet until Nick is back on the rail and they trade off. Whereas when I sail with Alan, he hoists so that the trimmer is like ready to go. Different people want to do different things, so having the flexibility as a team to make those adjustments is really important. And then knowing what kind of set we're doing, what the exit angle is going to be. Do I want to come out low because we might want to jibe? Do I want to come out like getting on the step? Is it lazy plane? Having an idea of where I want to go before I'm actually there is really important. All right, here we go again when I try and do this. Escape, click. So this is going to be, after we watch this lovely little video. Sorry for my ads.
Little things that shouldn't be in the code.
Don't renew. This is the, oops. This is the windward mark of the first race of worlds. Oops, sorry. So this is Jack Franco coming in. He ended up getting second in the first race. Came in on the port tack lay line, was able to, you know, he had good separation for the most part. I point this out because you'll see eventually a lot of people were coming in on the port tack lay line. We were pretty deep in this race, but we are still back here on the port tack lay line.
Notice that they had the offset mark set that you couldn't actually start the course until you got around the offset mark too.
Yeah.
That short little leg between the windward mark and the offset mark, there was a lot of shouting going on.
So much shouting. Lots of yelling. This isn't even the most yelliest of marks.
And then, yeah, the judges were hollering at people too.
So that's us, 34. Like, we are deep. And we're coming in just behind that pack, and he pans away, but we bowed a big pack that was coming in right there at the mark we just tapped. And I put this up here because, like, we're rounding deep, like, in, like, the 30 range. And the play was to stay low, and we ended up jibing pretty soon after the mark rounding, and we ended up rounding the leeward gate in second. So it's a really great example, though, of like, yeah? Oh, nice. So I didn't even plan that. It was remarkable the gains you could make if you're just willing to come in on that lay line, not fuck it up, obviously, not hit anyone, and then jibe out. Like, I think that blue kite might have been. No, that's not us. But
I think that might have been us.
yeah, I think it was. Anyway.
Black Pearl, 240, Val 30 is Stampede, that's Bruno.
He does such a good job of knowing who everyone is. It's very impressive. I just was really, it was, that first race was a real reminder of like how strong that lay line could be for me.
So when did you call going to the other side to make the jibe and to play that side of the course?
We probably called it in the top third of the run.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we converged at the bottom. So Franco had gone on the other side, and when we converged, we rounded right with him.
Was that shift or pressure? Or what?
It was pressure, because this was the lightest day we had sailing, I'd say. And I also think it was like the willingness to do something slightly different.
Yeah, 'cause
So-
you weren't protecting. You were
Yeah, I was like, how are we gonna
Come
come
back.
back? This is a really great video. Wait, why is it doing all this to me? Oh,
Katie's
hold on.
looking pretty.
You got the expansion available there,
Okay,
next to the speaker.
thank you.
Dell, Marlene,
No, I'm going all the way up.
reporting live.
So this is the first
from
race,
5,
or not.
Mark 1.
Well, he'll tell us what it is.
And looks like the action's going to be pretty wet and wild up here. Got,
This is
the usual
in
cast of
Davis
characters
Island.
coming in. A little more even race course this time. The right side is paying more than the left. The left has been dominating all morning long. Let's see what happens next.
Two boats I'm happy to see.
Is the new Mr.
Moving
Pitiful Kevin
up
Downey. This
is the
Oh,
new Mr.
oops.
Pitiful Kevin
I didn't
Downey.
know,
This
just
is a
click
new
in the
boat for
screen,
him.
pause it.
I'm going to flip this around
And
so
turn
you
the
can
sound
see
off.
him.
So
just the lighting here a little bit.
the hedgehog is going to come in here on port tack, and I think this is another
First
example
around the mark.
of like it
Kevin
paying
Downey's
off.
Mr. Pitiful, followed by Judd Smith's
That's
10.
the name of the boat, right? Mr. Pitiful, that's not like.
Yeah.
Big starboard tack parade. Thank you,
Big
Katie.
starboard tack parade, exactly.
Wow, look at all of them.
And there's a ton of boats
We
on
have
starboard tack here.
6'5". 34, 24.
And I
Rankin Savasana, 49.
and we all saw the stack up.
51. Hedgehog is
earlier.
going to try to stuff it in here.
Yeah.
Let's see if he's going to be successful. So we have 51, 50, progress,
There's-
21. Oh,
He
Hedgehog
does
stuffs
such
it
a
in.
well executed just
Nicely
like
done.
sneak in there.
Ayacucho from Annapolis also. John Heaton's Imperia.
Like he's not going fast, but he would have had to duck a lot more boats if he didn't do
46-15.
that.
We have some bumper boats going on between some boats down here. Oh, some more. Frank
We can keep
McNamara
watching
on
it if you want, or we can go on to the next one.
About 47. Seems to have snagged
Yep.
So it's
Mark?
great.
Yeah.
a lot of yelling going on.
78, 83, 23.
I didn't even notice that boat. This was like
Believe
floating
somebody snagged the
below.
mark.
25.
Anyway.
I'll never forget, it was a couple of years ago with the Annapolis news that they had, the remote control marks.
Yeah.
And the current was ripping,
Mhm.
and somebody like dragged the mark down,
Oh, yeah.
and then like, once they got clear of it, the mark literally motored itself back to where it was, and everybody was like, oh, okay, cool, the mark is now lured, we're making it, and all of a sudden, it just sailed right across their bows, and they're like, oh, shit.
I remember that. It was just, it was like, zoom.
Yeah.
I think that all of the marks should have traveling music if you're using a mark set bot. And when a mark is moving, we should have like the Muppets theme song come over the radio so that we know it's moving. I think this would work for pinging really, really well because people use that as a start pin and you don't know if it's set or not. So like play some traveling music until we know it's set and then we can go pay.
Have you guys seen that, the videos where Marlene's in the bots?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are great
I was
videos.
there, not seeing that.
They're really good.
This last one is an example of when things go awry. And it is the 9th race of Worlds.
All right, here we go. Heading into Mark 1 of race 9. Surge is going to lead this one.
And I
Ryan
believe
McKillen,
it was,
John Wallace,
I think the
Buckley,
Brutus
Ryan
and
Cate
Peter Duncan were battling for the top spot.
Back to
And
their
then
left
there was a
is
not so
Norwood.
great attempt at stuffing it in and making it harder
Across,
to
you
see.
have 44, Denizic. You have Vincitore coming at us. You have just tacking far left.
If I had more time, I would have tried to edit this down so that we didn't have to watch all of it, but
Inside to the mark.
at time.
Nice lead for Surge.
Yeah,
So we're looking for 11. who's
Oh,
right
you'll
here
see
at
it.
82. Our
you'll
leaders.
know. Hasn't happened yet.
Norboy in second. 50 is at Lebanon.
It was.
Reggae Shark. Ocean Pack is doing a little bit of a up to get around. Cate Muller-Terhune, Casting Couch is next. There's John Heaton, Imperial.
else?
89
That's
is
what
Williams.
Duncan is
91 coming across
that
the board is DeCasse.
4-digit
And with
boat.
Duncan behind them, leaders in Corinthians and
Who's
second
in
place
second.
overall. So let's see if they can, how they
And then
can
it
get in
goes
there.
to
27 's got to figure out how to get around. 10 is Brazilian
Well,
boats. 10 is 44, 77 Monaco.
he thinks he's
so
making it.
Oh, 55. Ooh, that's a big mess with 56 also hitting the mark. Duncan is not going to make that around now. They're hitting the mark. So Duncan's wrapped on the mark with Cigaro. Inside is Islanders. Duncan is trying to get around by hand.
Yeah.
Victor on the bow. That's a mess.
So they still are dragging the mark, by the way.
Down now. 26 here is.
Yeah. And then you see the kelp cutter go.
Is Marscallison.
Yeah.
67 is Lamos. Duncan is
Yes.
around now.
That's why they were disqualified in that race. So,
Oh, so he cut the.
yes. Yes.
Here they come
With the
around.
kelp cutter.
98 is Tuesday.
And he did not spin, I don't think. Well, yeah.
It was scored as a DNE, so it was, he was not able to drop.
Do not exclude.
A little bit of a struggle
It's
still
not
on.
a-
But this I also
Drop
think
that.
is a great example of in a big fleet, like it's almost foolish not to come in on the port tackling line if you can, because the opportunity that exists to pass those just packs of boats that are stacked up way too high on the ley line is ripe for the taking.
There's always the other problem too, there's no hole.
That is, there's a risk reward factor for sure.
Zen would say, stiffen up there,
We're
Roger.
going down, down, down.
Yeah.
There goes 20 boats.
It's a definite risk reward. So I wonder if I can go to full screen.
You can at the bottom.
Yeah, you can do.
So
big
that's-
Oh,
it.
yeah. Thank you.
and
All right,
you know-
I'm on slide 13 of 16. I did not anticipate that I would be talking this long, guys. Thank you. Thank you. I hope it's interesting.
It is.
Yes, okay.
Good. All right, so downwind. Comms, super similar to upwind. Obviously, the person that's doing the trimming should not be talking about anything else except for the kite. I will always be listening first and foremost to the kite trimmer when we're going downwind. Like, they are my priority unless the tactician says it's my boat. And then I know, oh, there's a tactical decision that's happening and we're engaging or trying to separate from a threat. Real important in that communication chain is the tactician handing the boat back to the trimmer. It's just a my boat, your boat, but it's so critical, especially for the driver, to know like who am I listening to. So, and the priorities are always changing. So things I like to practice when I'm going downwind on like pre-race or in between races if the conditions have changed, but like try and throw in like a practice of the high wing versus the low wing if it's winging conditions. It can be easier or harder to sail high wing versus low wing depending on the wave state.
Can you explain what you mean by high wing and low wing?
Yeah. So, so all things even, we're going downwind, wing on wing. This is going to be tough for me actually now that I think about it. If I want to sail high wing, let's say the kite is on the port side of the boat, the left side of the boat. High wing, I'm sailing up more towards the kite. And then low wing, I would be sailing further downwind, so deeper. Sometimes if you're trying to, if you want to maintain the lane you're in, but create some separation laterally from a boat behind you, you might want to sail high wing or low wing, depending on where the other boat behind you is going. So it can be harder
So it's
depending.
really about getting out of the shadow.
Yes. And then the other thing I would say on the wing, I didn't put this up here. I always like when the trimmer refers to putting the bow left or right. Once you're on the wing, that shit gets confusing. Like my brain does not operate that way. Just like tell me left or right.
Yep.
And I'm, you know, conscious of the curl. It's kind of like I'm sailing a symmetrical kite at that point. Like you're sailing into the curl, you're conscious of it. Like I'm trying to not let it collapse, but definitely left or right is like critical.
So you're watching the curl and
Yeah.
actually you're trimming the curl as well as the trimmer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
A little, and it's just little minutia,
But at that point in time, it's not, you don't want to both do it because then you're overreacting. So you have to be.
yeah, it's weird because it's like if we're sailing high wing, let's say, so like the threat of the collapse is like that much more, I'm probably going to be more likely to make an adjustment to help the trimmer out because it's going to be harder to keep the trim. And then in transitional breeze, just be prepared to move a lot, like lazy plane to wing, back to lazy plane, back to full plane, like, and it's not just like moving the boat around laterally with the breeze, but like moving back and forth in the boat. It's, if there's any sort of wave, the ability to like move your body weight to help the boat get over the wave is really critical, and it's going to be more critical because I believe we've taken out the ability to pump unlimitedly downwind.
The spinnaker still unlimited and the main only on waves? They're changing that?
I think they changed it.
I think they have a flag.
There's a
And if
flag
they fly
now.
a particular flag, which we probably won't see here in Annapolis.
Yeah, there's a flag
It
now.
restricts it to
Yeah.
single pump.
Yeah.
But if that flag's not
And that's
up,
what they think that that's planing conditions.
Yeah.
So like you can pump, single pump in what the race committee is considering planing conditions, which I would like to say if it's on the edge, it's going to be different for every boat.
Right. Crew weight dependent.
Yeah. And then if it's not flying, you only get, you can't pump, right?
I think you're allowed one pump to establish the plane.
Yeah. And that's it.
Yep.
So it's a rule that I have not read closely and plan on reading before I go sailing next time. And I probably should have been more prepared to talk about it since I opened my mouth about it. But it's changing, so keep that in mind. But because of that, it makes the body weight shift that much more important for establishing planing.
An observation.
Mm-hmm.
Your crew are probably doing it naturally, but it took my crew time to realize that when the wave picked up one end of the boat or the other,
Mm-hmm.
someone had to be the designated counterweight.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we couldn't hold wing away.
Yeah. Ooh, there's such a if you follow Leif Sigmund, he owns the Norboy on Facebook. He's been putting a lot of really great videos up of their sailing, and he's down in Puerto Vallarta right now, and they just put up a video yesterday of going downwind, and I can go to my Facebook and find it really quick because it's a really great example of precisely that. Oh, they're going on the wing, and like Bill's the one that's like constantly the counterweight here, and it's that moment right there I thought was like a good example. It was right at the end. But anyway, yeah, having someone designated to be the counter though is really important, especially when you're not doing it all the time. Like, it just makes it easier to have that person dedicated. Gates are fun. I think gates are, I think lured marks are my personal like weakest points. So I was like, oh God, what am I gonna say? I think this is where I falter the most and have bad mark runnings. But just rules of thumb, round the favored gate if all things are even. around the gate that takes me to the favorite side of the beat. Like, kind of like with the start line, a gate's got to be like real favored to take me to the wrong side of the course. So when I'm thinking about the gates, though, like if one gate's drastically favored, like is it super crowded? Is it going to be a total shit show that I'm going to get a really bad mark rounding on? Like, are there a ton of people overlapped inside of me? Is it going to be easy if I round the other mark to tack to still go to the side of the course that I want to? So like, ultimately, where do I have a better chance of rounding cleanly? And just like the start, like having the opportunity to have your boat at full speed, like as you're coming around the mark, is incredibly important, because as you'll see, people will round the mark without their jib even out. So if you have your jib out and you're going 6 knots and they're going 5, I guess it's okay if they're on the inside of you, you know? You can make it work. But there's a lot of gains to be made at gate marks. I personally also think there's a lot of gains to be made just by slowing down. If you're coming into it in the thick of it and it's going to be messy no matter what, take the kite down earlier than you think you would. Slow the boat down. Like if you're driving, do a little swiggle. Like slow the boat down, let people round, come in and have a clean mark rounding. You're probably going to be ahead of the people that rounded on the outside of a shit fight. And then last but not least, the finish. Yay! I love this picture too, because it's a race I won in Chicago. So, home sweet home. So, a lot of times at events, you can actually identify the favored end of the finish line before you're even starting. If it's like a, hey, we're finishing on the opposite side of the boat and the pin's just like set, there's a good chance that the race committee is not like resetting it every time. And you can be sailing around pre-start and be like, oh, hey guys, like the pin is really favored. Just have that in the back pocket. And then always be communicating about what the play for the finish is. Are we staying high and going fast? Are we diving? It can be like really tricky and really stressful. So just continually communicating the plan in the last 15 boat lengths is really important. Like I love when my tactician is talking to me more in that last final bit, because it's the end of the race. Like you could have been sailing for 2 hours at this point, like an hour, probably not 2 hours, that's lengthy. But you've been sailing and focusing really hard for an hour plus, and it's that last final moment. There could be a ton of boats around you, and like you just freak out and it all goes to shit. So having a constant reminder of like, we're staying up, or like, wait for my call to dive down. Like those are really great things that I love hearing, not just for myself as the driver, but also for the trimmer. And I have a tendency when we're getting close to the line to want to turn down towards it. Or like we're going fairly fast, we're not on the step, we're just normal sailing, like VMG, and like going down feels good. It feels like I'm getting closer to the line. But that's not the play in the moment. So like having the tactician constantly remind me not to go down is very important. And then I added one last video, oh my God, of precisely that. I understand why this is doing this now because I'm opening it in a different web browser. And this is just a Davis Island finish. It's one where I did a good job of actually not freaking out too much. But it's like annoying sloppy finish conditions.
I am not analyzing, so you cannot use this for protest.
You need to establish that.
Relay till
That's just her thing.
Yeah.
first alliance 10.
So, like, not diving until the last moment there was like a struggle for me. Like, and I had to have Alan and Jackson constantly be like, stay up, don't get too slow. Because otherwise, it would have been really easy for all of those boats to pass us in the final moment. Like, there have been times where all of those boats have passed me. So, having, yay.
Next batch to finish. All green, progress, about
Her voice is so calming. I never noticed it before.
We have John Brennan, about 50.
Anyway.
In the background is Chip Taylor. He's our PRO for this race, or for this series.
She's a bit complicated.
I know, right? She's got like that calm golf voice. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that was all I had.
That was great.
It was a lot. Does anyone have like questions or things that they're like jazzed about that they really want to talk about, or like?
We're coming out with a book.
Books are. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's my observation, maybe not yours. If I go to a venue multiple times, it's easier.
Yeah.
So if you have a real big objective and you can get there beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
life will be better.
I agree. I love going to Davis Island. I like it. I like the people there. I like the venue for the most part, except for the days that we don't sail. I just really enjoy it, and it becomes like second nature sailing there. Like, we have so much data. Oh, that's the other thing that I wanted to share with you guys really quickly, is like data points. So we have a Google Drive that we have that Nick started because he's highly organized like that. We keep I don't know why it's not opening. We keep like a work list that's constantly going. A lot more of these things are checked off than appears on the list, but we assign things to people. We also have just like really quick numbers in here. These have changed, so I wouldn't take these for any sort of like standard. See, we started out at 700 pounds. Wow. Didn't even realize that. We also have, we have a running list of sales, but that's because we burn through a lot of sales. But the other thing that we have that I love is we have team notes. And this is a document that we've all added to about our strengths and weaknesses and things that we've noticed at different regattas, upwind notes, downwind notes. Like, we'll put questions in there. Like someone said, when does Jackson move behind Cate? And like, I answered what I felt like. Things that we can improve on, different regattas. Anyway, we have notes on sail selection and stuff like that in there. It's a really, like, for us, this became a really nice way when we weren't together to still be sharing information. And then we have a similar document that we made right before Worlds that was an analysis of our pre-Worlds, because we had a really rough pre-Worlds. We were like, we suck. We came out of it and we're terrible. Like, we're going to do so shitty at this regatta. Like, we really were in our heads about it. And, but putting it all on paper and thinking about it and taking a little break and separating from it, like, allowed us to come back and take what we needed from that and move forward.
So you use that document to capture your thoughts as opposed to going back and reading it as much as more crystallizing this is what happened.
Both.
Right.
Like we use it for both. We capture like what happened, and then it's to your point about going back to the same venue more than once. Like it's a document that like before the St. Pete nude this year, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go back and look at the notes from when we were in St. Pete. So it becomes just like this running, breathing document. And it's a really great tool for self-assessment that you might not be thinking about in the moment, but you walk away from an event and you're like, man, I could have done X like way better. Put it in the document so everyone around you knows that you know that you could have done X better. Because it's really all about like us not just identifying our strengths, but also like what are our weaknesses and what do we need to work on and how do we take ourselves to the next level. And I think that's like, if I can say one thing about like where I've pushed my personal sailing in the last like 2 years, I mean, I used to want to go to regattas because I want to drink with my friends and have fun and like maybe get mid-fleet, and that was okay with me. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I know I'm really capable. Like, I know I'm good at driving the boat. Like, I want to do more than that. And I would say in the top 20 boats, I have the smallest budget for sure. And like, how am I going to make the most out of what I have? And it's the willingness to self-assess and the willingness to like own up to the things that I need to be better at and have people around me that are willing to do the exact same thing. Because it helps make all of us better. And then it makes it more fun. Because winning is a hell of a lot more fun. And then you get beers on the way in.
When did you guys start keeping the notes for the team?
I would say Davis Island 1 of 2020. So December of 2022. So we sailed the North Americans in 2022 and we qualified for Worlds. Sat at the bar in Toronto and I was like, so like us here, this group, we'll do this? And they were all like, yeah, let's do it. And I had sailed with Nick a bunch before. I think the other thing that's really interesting about this little group, so I had sailed an event with Bill Hardesty. He was supposed to come in and do the Inshore Verve in Chicago and then the North Americans in Canada with me. He had some family stuff come up. I completely understand kid stuff. Whatever, not a big deal to me. He was like, I can't do the Inshore Verve. I'm going to try and find someone for you. Lots of rigmarole for 2 weeks. Alan calls and he's like, Jackson's going to come and sail with you. The last time like I had really interacted with Jackson was when we got second and he won the J72 Worlds. So that was a, heated situation. Lots of emotions and feelings going to that. And I was like, okay. And we got on the boat. And I would say the other thing is Jeff Hayden, we call him JBC, which is Junior Bear Cub. It's like a weird North Sails thing, I guess. So I hadn't sailed with him either. But Alan had sailed J74 Worlds with him. And he was like, he's great, young kid, he'll do whatever, like you'll love him. So we went into the Inshore Verve with the only person on the boat that I had really sailed with before was Nick. He had normally trimmed main and called tactics, but because originally Hardesty was supposed to come, he was gonna trim the jib and the kite. So I have this person, but he's not in the same position that I normally have him in. And we went for it. We did 2 hours of sailing the day before the regatta. And then we went sailing, and I came off the water, and I will say it was night and day from any other sailing I had done before. It was a level of pure like I'll say professionalism that I had never even, it just never occurred to me that it would be like that. It was very focused. We weren't out very long. We did what we wanted to do. And then we were like, okay, like we feel good. Like we just got out there when sailing came in. And we went sailing the next day, and I think we ended the day in like 4th. And I think we won a race. And like I was beating Alan. I was sailing with like Chris Larson. And someone came up to me and they were like, wow, you guys are doing so great. Like, how long have you all been sailing together? And we were like, like 5 hours. Like, but we gelled immediately. I actually had to like make the decision to bring Jackson to Canada instead of Bill, which was a big decision. And then when we qualified, like when we were sitting in second at that regatta, I was like, what is going on here? Like it was remarkable, and I was so incredibly proud. And I was like, well, I don't want to do this with anyone besides these people. So after that, like got home, put together a calendar of like what I thought I could commit to and afford, and had them all sign up for it. We had a couple regattas where one person couldn't make it. Like we sailed the St. Pete Nude that year with Skip D-Ball doing bow because Jeff had to sail Lightnings. We sailed another regatta where I think Jackson couldn't make it. So we had a couple events where we weren't all together, but for the most part, I think we probably sailed like 4 to 5 events as a team going into that, which like when I think about it is a lot. Like we sailed so much last year. And it was really, really fun. And it's like one of those things I look back on, I'm like, that was such a great situation. Like, and who knows if it will ever happen again that way. But, and they made me immensely better. And I'm like eternally grateful. But yeah, none of us had ever really gone all in together before. So it was fun. And that's so like, yeah, I think when we decided in December, like we're doing Worlds, we're doing all this, we were like, we gotta start documenting everything so that we have an understanding of where we are and where we want to go and what the goal is. So
we were talking about crew weight. You think 750 is sort of a normal?
I think 750 is
Good.
Perfectly normal. Yeah.
Normal's the wrong word. Well, normal.
Desired.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've sailed with as much as 800, and the only time I feel like being on the heavier side is a hindrance, in my opinion, is when you're in like a lazy plane. I think that's where it becomes just a fucking roadblock. But light air, I don't think it's that big of a difference because you can put weight forward, and heavier, obviously, it's great.
I've just gotten a different instrument that gives me heel.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh,
what are your normal numbers for heel and 4.5?
yeah. So the heel, I don't. So it's funny. I thought I had that in there. Heel, I would say it is still like a wave dependent thing, but anything flatter than 7, in my mind, is becoming too flat. 11 is like where we like to live now. 10 to 11. Upwind. Sorry, upwind.
So, and then 4.5?
Generally speak, so we have 2 marks on our boat. One is like the mid beam, so the widest part, and then truth be told, I don't know what the other one is. I think it's slightly aft of that. But if it is wavy, going upwind will move people slightly aft. So it'll be, I would judge it at like half a butt cheek aft. And I would say in like a venue like St. Pete, we were actually like shifting a little over the waves because they were kind of short and choppy. So, but it, like, I will say the heel angle is something that I am constantly looking at when I drive. I probably look at.
Is your main number pretty much?
Yeah, I would say 10 to 11 is like a good sweet spot upwind if there's like good breeze. and if it's like a little choppy, and like I'm constantly making sure that the boat is going, like, if the condition warrants 6 knots or like 5-8, depending on the breeze, like somewhere in that 5-8 to 6-1, 6-2 range. And then looking at the angle of heel and then checking the telltales. That's like my little, I'll say this, at the St. Pete nude this year, we had some really great races and we had one shitter. We had one race that we were like, man, if we hadn't fucked that up, like we'd be winning the regatta. And that was a race where, like, God love Ian Coleman, he like got frustrated and went to like pull a line from down below and pulled the cord, like the wire, and my heel angle was gone. Like we had to replace the wire when we came in, and it was the exact same conditions the next day, and we were the fastest boat upwind. And Alan was like, what happened? And I was like, well, I have the heel angle again. I was like, I guess it makes that big of a difference. Like the difference between winning and being in 12th.
So you have like, I don't know, is it, you have an inclinometer that's?
Yeah, the B&G that we have it all through hull.
It's on the back for us.
Carlos just got that.
Yeah.
So,
Carlos has that built in.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a separate thing.